Hello and welcome to Day 4's qualifying highlights for the Forza Horizon 4 Olympic Games Championship. Today we are looking at the English qualifiers. So England putting up 5 different entrants. And the first one that we are going to look at today, and the first one to set out on our track here, is the Aston Martin Vantage GT12. So here we have our 2016 Aston Martin Vantage GT12 coming in at a price tag of $475,600. And the Aston Martin Vantage GT12, a racing-bred version of Aston Martin's V12 Vantage S from the same time period. As you can see, a body kit on there, a rear diffuser, some upgrades from the factory to make this a pure racing car, but even more upgrades coming out, adding some racing tires, front splitter, rear wing, and other upgrades that put the Aston Martin Vantage GT12 up to the S1 900 homologation category for our qualifying. Let's take a look at the numbers here. You can see very strong handling and braking numbers coming out from this car, 9.8 and 10 respectively. Very, very, very strong, but unfortunately a little low on the speed at 7.4. Now, as we see here, this car having 714 horsepower, 530 feet-pounds of torque, and weighing in at 3,100 pounds with a V12 engine, 6.4 liters, as we can see there. This car running an all-wheel drive setup, meaning it won't have traction control, but we can see very, very strong handling and braking numbers, and should have good acceleration and launch due to that setup as well. So let's go and take a look at the tuning numbers. We have here 0 to 60 times coming in at 2.1. 0 to 100 at 5.1. Very strong acceleration coming from this car, owing primarily, I'm sure, to the all-wheel drive setup with a strong power plant at that V12, and a top speed of 196 miles per hour, a little bit low for the S1 category, usually targeting about 200 miles per hour. But in the past, for our qualifiers here at Kensington Downs, we have seen primarily cars based more on speed than handling do better, and usually the homologation target of S1 starting at 200, usually the cars that go up to about 210, 215 or higher seem to do better as they have a chance to show that speed on the back straight. So this car having some very strong handling and braking numbers, but might be a little bit slow on the back straight, might have some issues with speed, but overall should put up some strong numbers, and will be interesting to see how that one gets out shortly on the track. Alright, with the Aston Martin getting out on the track, we are off and away for the English qualifiers. The Aston Martin rounding the final corner, and now onto the straightaway towards the finish for the first lap. Let's see what kind of numbers we get to see put up here from a standstill and through traffic. 328.397. Not the strongest numbers, but hopefully the Aston will be able to carve some more time out in the corners. Coming in for the second lap, 324.704. Fourth lap now, 324.45. A little bit better, but going to need to pick up the pace if he's going to want to make a reasonable time here. Let's see the Aston on the back straight, powering through the S-curves, looks like here. 186. Blasting up to the top speed. Just cresting 200 miles per hour there. Now finally for the last lap, here comes the Aston Martin down the straightaway and across the line. Let's take a look at the final time for the Aston Martin, 323.5. A reasonably considerable effort there for the Aston Martin, certainly within qualifying range, but with some of the great times that we've seen so far, might not be quite enough. Let's go down and see what happens with our next competitor. Let's take a look at which car we're dealing with. Alright, now England's second entrant for qualifying is the 2017 Bentley Continental GT Forza Edition. Now this vehicle, as you can see here, a very similar vehicle to the Aston Martin GT12 in that it is a racing-bred version from Bentley of their Continental GT Speed. And as you can see, the Bentley factory rear wing and splitter, some side skirts, a new hood, and several different racing suspension and tuning implementations that have turned a factory Bentley GT Speed into a racing-bred version from the Bentley factory, but even further advanced by some tuning and upgrades for the S1 900 homologation category. So let's take a look at the numbers for the Bentley. And here we can see handling and braking very strong again at 8.9 and 9.5. One thing to note here, though, is after a rather poor performance, relatively speaking anyways, from the Aston Martin Vantage GT 12, coming in at some numbers not quite what the Aston Martin racing team were looking for, Bentley was able to get lucky coming after the Aston Martin to understand that their car, set up in a similar manner, is probably going to need a little bit more speed. So running the all-wheel drive setup as they were before, they instead took a few upgrades out of handling and braking and moved a little bit into speed by throwing on some larger turbos, which we can see here is paying dividends with a power number of 876 horsepower, 790 feet-pounds of torque, very strong, 4,700 pounds, so a little bit heavy there, but another very large W12 engine, 6.3 liters here, putting out a bit more speed here at 8.0 than the Aston Martin Vantage GT12, a smart move from the Bentley racing team in the moments before their qualifying in order to put their vehicle into a little bit higher top speed. So we can see here 0 to 60 times 2.87 and 0 to 100 6.5, a little bit slower than the Aston Martin, but still some very strong acceleration numbers and a top speed of 214 compared to the Aston Martin's 196. So a much better homologation target, I believe, for the Bentley to do well on our Kensington Downs track at 214. Should be able to put some strong power numbers down, and with very good handling and braking, we expect to see this car put up some very solid numbers and might even be able to take the English crown. We will have to go to the highlights to see what happens. Here we have it, the Bentley Continental GT Speed taking off for its first lap. Coming in now for its first lap, the Bentley 327.788. Slightly better than the Aston Martin so far, a good sign. Second lap coming in now, 322.971, already a very strong time and knocking out the Aston Martin from contention. Let's see how the Bentley can do going forward. And now the third lap for the Bentley, 322.482, slightly better than the last one. 2 more laps to go. Alright, the Bentley on the back straight, powering through those S's, very strong, 199 miles per hour and climbing, going up to a top speed of 212. Fourth lap looking strong, 321.884, already in the 21s. The Bentley now coming across the straight for its last lap, and across the line, the Bentley Continental GT Forza Edition coming in 321.884, knocking out the Aston Martin Vantage GT12. Looks like that little bit of speed managed to help them quite a lot here. Let's see if it's enough to take the English crown. And now the third contestant for the British qualifier is the 2015 McLaren 650S. Now this vehicle, McLaren built supercar from England. The 650S, very strong number here at S1, already coming out of the factory at S1, but some very key upgrades coming out here from the McLaren racing team, putting on a large rear wing, as we can see, some lowering, some new wheels, a roll cage, and many other performance numbers being packed in underneath the hood to put our McLaren 650S up to homologation number of S1 900 to be able to pack as much in there as they possibly could. So let's take a look at the numbers here. Handling and braking 8.6 and 9.2, very strong in those categories. Certainly not on the low end, should be definitely enough. Running an all-wheel drive setup swapped from rear-wheel drive to power it to some very serious acceleration and launch numbers here, and speed running at about 7.8, but shouldn't necessarily be a problem for the McLaren. Very strong power plant there. And 744 horsepower, 580 feet-pounds of torque, 3,300 pounds. Some strong numbers coming out here for the McLaren, but it's looking even stronger as we go to the tuning numbers. Take a look at this. 0 to 60 time 1.765, extremely strong there. And 0 to 100 4.4, some of the strongest acceleration numbers we've seen, owing primarily to the all-wheel drive setup that the McLaren's running, and a very strong power plant, a supercar power plant that has been upgraded even further, and still managing to make a good top speed of 209 miles per hour. Certainly not the highest we've seen, a little bit on the lower end perhaps of some of our cars, but certainly over 200 as the S1 homologation target, and 209, I think the McLaren racing team pinpointing around the 209 or 210 mark as just enough that they need to make on the back straight while keeping as much acceleration and handling going through the corners. So I think that this car is definitely going to put out some strong numbers. It's certainly an acceleration. It's going to be able to get up and go very fast. And I mean, just look at this thing, the bright orange and black. Very stunning, beautiful car, strong competitor coming out from McLaren. One of their two competitors. We'll see the other later. But this car should be able to put out some numbers, hopefully about as similar as the racing cars from the Bentley and the Aston Martin. This car, although an upgraded version of a stock supercar and not exactly a racing bred version from the factory, still in a similar category to those other two, so racing third after the Aston Martin and the Bentley. We'll see how it does on the track. On track now with the McLaren 650S, and taking off for its first lap. Look at that launch, beautiful acceleration, the get up and go, powering all the way immediately to the front of the pack. Let's see how the McLaren handles this track. And after what looked to be a very strong lap, let's see what the McLaren puts up. A 319.597 on the first lap. Absolutely incredible. I can't even believe what I'm seeing here. From a standstill, the McLaren just gets up and goes, and boy does it go. This McLaren, absolutely monstrous performance as we see it coming now down to the bridge chicane. A 319.597 on the very first lap. From a standstill, this car has already put up a number that was astronomical only one day ago, and knocked out both the Aston Martin Vantage GT12 and the Bentley Continental GT immediately within the first lap. I cannot wait to see what kind of numbers we're going to see from this car. The first uncontested lap coming in now for the 650S. A 318.743, already into the 18-second mark. Uncharted territory now coming out from the English Qualifier, and what a car this 650S is. Strong looking lap number 3 coming in for the McLaren. 317.235, the 17s. The McLaren now coming down through the straight. Makes light work of the S-curves at 196 miles per hour, very strong. Let's see where it peaks on the downhill. 209 miles per hour, hitting that top speed. The 650S coming in for its final lap and digging deep for this one. Across the line, the McLaren 650S coming back with a 316.789. What an absolute monstrous time here for the McLaren 650S. I cannot believe that we have now shattered 2 whole second barriers. That is going to be a hard time to beat. Alright, now our fourth contestant for the English Qualifier is the 1997 TVR Carrera Speed 12. Now this vehicle, a prototype from English car manufacturer TVR, intended to be the world's fastest car, looking to make a run at over 245 miles per hour, and also be the basis of a GT1 car. But unfortunately, as several issues with TVR ended up happening, this car not able to go out into production and never quite fully tested. But the English throwing this one in to consideration for the Olympic Games, potentially a very strong competitor, already very high up in the S1 category, and making it very close to the S1 900 mark as a stock vehicle, but being upgraded here, as we can see, to the S1 900 category. And let's take a look at the numbers here. We have 9.1 in speed, of course, very high speed, and handling at 8.2 and braking as well as 8.2. Still very strong numbers, being over the 8s, but not quite as high as some of the contestants that we've already seen so far. Clearly a speed over handling vehicle, which do tend to do a little bit better on our qualifying track, so that could bode well for the TVR. Although we can see handling, or rather acceleration and launch numbers, a little bit on the lower end. But we can see that that's probably due to the fact that this car is running a rear-wheel drive setup. So this car will be running rear-wheel drive with traction control. Wasn't able to convert to all-wheel drive, even if they wanted to, as that would have put it over 900 and into the S2 category. So running a rear-wheel drive setup, one of two vehicles here in England, this one and our final contestant, both running rear-wheel drive, and also both from 1998, 1997. So the TVR Carrera Speed 12, if we take a look at the tuning numbers, get a better picture here, we can see 0 to 60 and 0 to 100, 3.3 and 5.7. Still pretty strong numbers, but a little bit slower, as you saw on the acceleration and launch numbers, than some of our all-wheel drive entrants. But the thing with this car is that it is a top speed car, so as we can see, 245.9 miles per hour here as the top speed. And so because of that, this car is going to be building power slowly and steadily with the massive V12 engine. Let's go back over here to see 850 horsepower, 690 feet-pounds of torque, only 2,000 pounds, rather light, and a 7.7 liter V12 engine, twin turboed, making quite a lot of power, and it's going to build that power over and over each gear as it is able to make it up to a top speed of 245.9 miles per hour. So that's why our acceleration numbers not looking as strong at the very low end, but very powerful on the high end. So we are looking to potentially see some very strong top speed numbers on the back straight for this vehicle, and if it can keep good enough handling, which I believe it can, at 8.2 and braking as well, if it can manage to make some good enough handling and keep some speed, we might be able to see some stronger numbers around the track as well. Alright, the TVR Carrera Speed 12 on the track, taking off and ready to put the hammer down. It's trying to catch the McLaren 650S. The TVR coming in for its first lap, a 3:22.921, very strong first lap for the TVR Carrera Speed 12. Powering through the S-curves now at over 208 miles per hour, coming down the back straight, powering its way up to 234 miles per hour. The TVR Carrera Speed 12 putting down some serious numbers and taking the top speed title of qualifying so far. Second lap coming in, 3:18.233, very strong numbers here. Let's see what it can do. Here comes a strong lap 3. 3:17.385, slowly chipping away at the mountain between the TVR and the McLaren. TVR coming down the straight for its fourth lap, 3:16.382. The TVR Carrera Speed 12 has done it. It has done the impossible and taken down the mighty McLaren 650S. And what a time that is, the low 16s. I cannot believe we've made it here, but boy oh boy do I love seeing these times. And as it comes back down the straight and across the line, the TVR Carrera Speed 12 speeds into first place for the English Qualifiers at 3:16.382, a phenomenal time here for the TVR with those massive power numbers and top speed. Absolutely incredible stuff here. I am blown away. And finally, our fifth contestant for an amazing English qualifier so far is the legend of the road racing world, the McLaren F1 GT from 1997, worth over $5.2 million. By far the most expensive vehicle that we have seen so far, and this car, an absolute legend, very, very strong track record in the road racing series. And McLaren managing to secure this vehicle for its English qualifiers at the last second, making quite a lot of roster changes from its initial lineup for England. But here we have it, our final and fifth car, the McLaren F1 GT, an absolute legend. A treat to see this one go around our track. And hopefully not going to be able to make a scratch on this one, worth over $5.2 million as we can see there. Not much homologation done here to this vehicle. S1 900 though, running a rear-wheel drive setup as all-wheel drive, perhaps putting that one too high into S2. But let's take a look at the numbers here. We can see handling and braking at 8.5 and 8.9. Quite strong here. And a speed of 8.6. Just very strong overall numbers. I think a very well-rounded car. Acceleration and launch perhaps not quite as strong as some of the all-wheel drive setups, but with traction control and the rear-wheel drive, the F1 GT should be able to do quite well as a very well-rounded car here. 664 horsepower, 490 feet-pounds of torque, and 2,400 pounds, a bit light. And quite able to put down quite a lot of power and some really good grip on this vehicle. As we can see, very good aerodynamics. And let's take a look at the upgrade and tuning. We have 0 to 60 speeds at 3.1 and 6.6. Quite strong numbers, not quite as strong as we've seen from the all-wheel drive cars, but for rear-wheel drive, again, very, very strong. And a top speed of 231 miles per hour, so very strong top speed, of course. Something rather necessary on the back straight, and hopefully we'll be able to maintain a lot of that speed through the corners, as it has some very great aerodynamics and grip, and the lateral G's there representing some of that as well. So this vehicle, an absolute legend of the road racing circuit, very expensive, and this one is going to be a very strong competitor, I'm sure, and all eyes are going to be on this car and how it will manage to do on the track, but with some monumental times coming out from our last two competitors. This car is going to have a mountain to climb, so let's see how our English qualifier ends. And our final competitor, the McLaren F1 GT, is off and away to try and catch the two Goliaths of the English qualifier. Let's see how it can do. The first lap coming in for the McLaren, a 3:22.887, strong time. Let's see how the F1 GT does on its first uncontested lap, a 3:18.922, good signs so far. Let's see if it can make up the rest. Third lap, 3:17.7, on pace so far it seems with the TVR. F1 GT going through the S-curves at over 200 here. Looking strong as it powers out, down the downhill and making it to 223 miles per hour. This is it, the F1 GT rounding the final corner and making its way down the straightaway for the last lap. But as time goes on and it crosses the line, unfortunately the McLaren F1 GT only able to put up a time of 3:17.703. Now we say only, as that is quite an amazing time, but unfortunately the two Goliaths, the other McLaren being the 650S and the TVR Carrera Speed 12, have done even better than that with 16-second times and absolutely smoked the competition, putting the TVR Carrera Speed 12 through to the English qualifying for the championship series. Alright, now with all of our times in for the qualifiers, let's take a look at the results here. We have a spreadsheet for the English qualifiers, starting off with the TVR Carrera Speed 12, the overall winner here, qualifying with a time of 3:16.382. Absolutely phenomenal, due primarily to its high speed. We can see here 0 to 60 times, 0 to 100 times, a little bit on the higher end. In fact, the highest 0 to 60 time, and not quite the highest 0 to 100 time, as you can see, as the Carrera Speed 12 does build a lot of power. And look at that top speed. Potential top speed of 245.9, and an actual on-track top speed we saw 234, a new record there, as well as a new record in qualifying for a time. And TVR worth $517,000 from 1998. And then our second place McLaren 650S coming in with an also phenomenal time of 3:16.789. Certainly a new bar set here with these two cars. And look at those impressive acceleration times, 1.765, much faster than anything else, 0 to 60, and still much faster, 0 to 100, 4.434. Ridiculous acceleration with that all-wheel drive setup and the modified supercar interior. The potential top speed of 209 and a track top speed of 209, hitting exactly its top speed, all that it needs to keep itself going, and $468,000, $950, the cheapest of these English vehicles. Very impressive there. 2015 the year on that one. And then we saw the McLaren F1 GT in third place, a legend of the road racing series, but with a qualifying time of 3 minutes 17.703. Very, very impressive yet again, but just not quite enough to take down the Cerberus Speed 12 or the McLaren 650S, owing primarily due to its low level of homologation being so close to that S1 900 target, and the rear-wheel drive perhaps, but still very good. 3.139 and 6.602 for 0 to 60 and 0 to 100 times, still quite impressive, and a potential top speed of 231, very high, and a track top speed of 223, almost tying the Bugatti EB110 for our top, and a value at a ridiculously exorbitant value of $5.2 million, owing to the McLaren F1 GT's legendary status and rarity. Impressive that we were able to secure this one for the English Qualifiers in 1997. And then in fourth place, the Bentley Continental GT Forza edition, qualifying with a time of 3:21.884, an impressive time perhaps in any other category, better than the Swedish qualifying time, in fact. But for the English, the competition was much, much too strong. And if we look at the acceleration numbers, 2.871, 6.569, still doing very well. Both of our cars on the bottom doing very well in acceleration, but just didn't quite have the speed, it seemed. The Bentley Continental 214, though, is a potentially good top speed, and an actual top speed of 212 was pretty good, even though faster than the McLaren 650S, but just didn't quite have the speed and the acceleration around the handling the corners that the McLaren 650S happened to have. And that one valued at $510,900. And finally, our Aston Martin Vantage GT12, putting up 323.5, a decent time for sure, but in this English qualifier, absolutely not even close enough. A whole 7 seconds slower than the TVR and the McLaren 650S, even with impressive acceleration times and a solid top speed, though it's not quite as fast as we might have needed, putting out 200 on the actual top speed, getting a little more than the potential top speed with that downhill there, at a value of $475,600. So there you have it, the TVR Cerberus Speed 12 qualifying for the English in the Championship Series, the only rear-wheel drive car so far to do so. And there you have it, an absolutely electrifying English qualifier with some amazing, mind-blowing times coming out from these English cars. The top three vehicles all completely destroying the French and their Bugatti EB110's current leader's time, as well as the TVR Cerberus Speed 12 destroying its top speed numbers. I mean, absolutely crazy, wild stuff coming out here. The 317s and the 316s. So England going to be a very, very strong powerhouse going into the championship. And really, at this point, all the other nations are going to be looking to try and match a challenge against the English, as it seems like some of the other nations are not quite going to be able to compete, but you never know, because the championship track has yet to be revealed, and we shall see how all of these cars do on the big day. Again, TVR, the Cerberus Speed 12, going through to face the other nations and represent England, and a bittersweet performance from the McLaren racing team, as both of their cars are doing very, very well. The McLaren 650S, one of the most amazing cars we have ever seen on this track, and still sadly losing out to the TVR Cerberus Speed 12. So really, really incredible stuff coming here from the English qualifier, and we look forward to seeing the TVR in the future. We'll see you next time. Stay tuned for Day 5, the Japanese qualifier, coming up very soon with those highlights. We'll see you.